Hi YouTube, it's Kathy, and this is my weekly entertainment wrap-up for January 13th to 19th. This week I read 2 books, I watched 1 show, and I listened to 1 book. Like I mentioned in my previous wrap-up, this one is obviously a little bit shorter than I usually do because I'm actually filming this on Thursday so it can go up on Sunday, because on Sunday I will be at PodCon in Seattle. I won't be bringing my tripod, I won't have a place to actually film a weekly wrap-up, so I had to do this ahead of time. The first book I finished this week was called Carmilla, which was an e-arc. This one comes out on June 7th and is the novelization of the web series Carmilla. Now obviously what drew me into this is I have seen the web series, it's fantastic. If you haven't seen it, I will link it down below, it's definitely worth your time. Unfortunately, with something like an adaptation from a web series to a novel, it's either gonna be really good or it's gonna be not great, and it was the latter. Although a lot of the moments that I really loved from the first one were there, so obviously I loved revisiting the web series in this format, there were a few things that bothered me. Firstly, when you're watching the web series, the person is doing a vlog and there's a lot of like live editing where they'll be like, oh, and the picture of the person I'm talking about is up in the corner right now, and in the web series it is, and because it's a visual medium you can kind of excuse that, but reading it on the page made me go, that's not how editing works, and that aspect of it didn't translate as well for me. Not to mention the fact that the dean has told her to stop doing videos, but she still keeps doing videos. That obviously probably annoyed me when I watched the web series. It annoys me more in print for some reason. Because much like this video, videos have your face in them, and I'm assuming, because I've never read the source material, that it was like leaflets or pamphlets that were being written anonymously, whereas when you're doing a vlog with your face, it doesn't really transfer very well. Obviously those problems are more so to do with the web series being the source material for this book. The thing I didn't really like about how it was adapted besides that is that there are scenes that take place outside of what we saw in the web series, and they could have been expanded upon a lot in the book to give us a lot more detail, a lot more action, and they just weren't. It was kind of the bare bones of what happened between shots in the web series. I would have liked to see more of what happened, more understanding of why certain things happened. There is one more thing that bothered me, and I hope it's just an oversight that's going to be fixed before it goes to publication, because it was really bothersome, and that's with the character of La Fontaine. La Fontaine goes by they/them pronouns. Several times throughout the text they were called she. Even though there were characters pointing out to another character that they go by they, just the bulk of the text referred to them as she, and that bothered me. I'm really hoping that's something that a line editor is going to catch before this actually goes to print in June, but who knows. All of this being said, the series is really fun. I appreciate that they tried to make an adaptation in novel format for people that like to read rather than watch. However, this will probably have the lowest star rating of my reading month. In fact, I really hope it has the lowest star rating of my reading month because I don't want to read anything worse than this in the rest of January. The other book I read this week was also an arc that comes out in April, and this one is called This One Looks Like a Boy by Lorimer Shenher. This one is being published locally because Lorimer is from the Vancouver area, at least I assume that's where he still lives. And this is an own voices memoir of transitioning. I really enjoyed how this memoir was put together. Firstly, Lorimer is a writer, so that obviously helped in writing this book. Lorimer has also written at least 1 book previously, and that one would have been about the Picton murders, because Lorimer was a police officer while that was going on. Essentially, this is a memoir, and it's just about him growing up and being very conflicted about transitioning because he didn't want to lose his friends, his family, eventually his wife and his children. And because there is no one narrative to transitioning, I feel it's important to hear as many narratives as possible. There are many stories these days of young children coming out basically as soon as they know and having supportive parents and going through the process that way, but that is not the case for this person who was born in the 1960s. In addition to the gender identity struggles that he faced, there's also just very interesting points throughout his life that I really enjoyed the stories he chose to include. So if you like memoirs, definitely check this one out when it comes out in April. The one show I watched this week, you guessed it, was Survivor. We managed to only watch 3 episodes because we were having a little bit of technical issues, but in those 3 episodes, 5 castaways went home. This happened because 3 people were voted off, as is the normal, but then also 1 person was medevaced and 1 person quit the game. So obviously it was a very action-packed 3-episode chunk. The book I listened to this week was Alice Isn't Dead by Joseph Fink. I am a huge fan of everything that Night Vale Presents puts out there in the world because It's fantastic. And the funny thing about me going to PodCon this weekend is I really haven't listened to many podcasts since the last PodCon because I've been listening to audiobooks instead. That being said, I did listen to at least the first season, maybe season and a half, of Alice Isn't Dead, and I tried to search out whether or not I should finish the season before reading the book, or if it was going to cover the same things. And it is a novelization of the podcast, so if you're worried about picking it up because you've never listened to the podcast, you don't have to. They cover the same content, just in different writing formats. Alice Isn't Dead is a horror novel in which a woman named Keisha believes that her wife Alice is not dead. You might have been able to guess that part. After her wife goes missing, she's presumed dead, there's a funeral, but Keisha doesn't really believe she's gone. And one day she happens to see Alice in the background of a newscast, so she goes on a giant trek to find her wife. Surprising no one, I thoroughly enjoyed this. Not only is it queer, not only does it feature a woman of color, not only is it a road trip novel that was perfectly narrated, it also deals heavily with Keisha's anxiety, which is Own Voice's representation by Joseph Fink, because about a decade ago, he started having panic attacks and anxiety. There was a short message at the end where the author talked about his anxiety and how Keisha and him share the same type, and even if it is not an anxiety that you have felt and you also have anxiety, there's obviously different anxieties. And it was very important for him that she go through this entire book with the anxiety and not be cured at the end, because that's not how brains work and that's not how anxiety works. Obviously, if you've listened to anything like Welcome to Night Vale, you know that the writing is going to be kind of weird, but whereas Welcome to Night Vale is very surrealist at times, the novelization of this podcast steers away from that and into the horror elements and really understanding why these creatures have come to be and what's really going on in this war. And I really enjoyed seeing this other side of his writing. I also wanted to make sure that I had finished this one before I went to PodCon, on the off chance that I run into him because he'll be there. He's a founding member of PodCon. That won't happen, but I always like to be able to say that, oh yes, I have finished reading that book that you just wrote. I really enjoyed it. That's it for this week. If you've read, watched, or listened to any of these, let me know about it down in the comments below. On the way down to the comments, if you hit that subscribe button, that would be very nice of you. You can like and share this as you see fit, and I will see you very soon. Bye!